The camera snapped, the lights flashed across the crowd, and in that instant, somewhere between an exclusive corner inside Planet Hollywood Times Square and a husband staring at his phone waiting for answers he didn't want to see, one photo quietly appeared online and accomplished what years of rumors, live-stream debates, podcast discussions, and endless social media theories never could. Because on an ordinary Tuesday that nobody thought twice about, the Bronx Empress and the Empire King suddenly stood inside the very same picture. Same spotlight, same energy, same undeniable presence. And the moment 50 Cent casually rested his arm on Remy Ma's shoulder, relaxed, effortless, and completely unbothered, the entire culture froze for a second and reacted as if a question hanging in the air since 2008 had finally been answered. Didn't I tell you something big was coming? I sat right here not long ago and said that before the next day arrived, one image would emerge that would completely change the conversation surrounding that household and force people to focus on what was really happening behind the scenes. Well, here we are. The morning has arrived, the photo is everywhere, and the marriage people have been carefully defending suddenly looks buried beneath a single camera flash. So slow down with me for a moment before we break every layer of this story apart. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications, because what I'm about to show you is the kind of deep breakdown that people will be sending straight into group chats, especially the same people who started questioning this marriage the second Pap got on live stream and began pushing explanations that simply weren't adding up. Now let's talk about the setting, because the location itself is telling half the story. Planet Hollywood Times Square, the venue connected to 50 Cent's massive business investment, the place many people view as his personal kingdom, the building the industry associates with his influence, his power, his brand, his territory, and his name. Then Remy Ma walks through the doors, not as someone's guest, not as an artist waiting backstage for a quick appearance, and definitely not as a forgotten name hidden near the bottom of an event flyer. She arrived as the center of attention, the birthday star, the Bronx Empress whose image filled the screens, whose initials decorated the celebration, and whose presence gave photographers every reason to bring their best equipment. Then came the moment everyone is talking about. Somewhere during the middle of the party, somewhere between Fat Joe raising a toast and Jadakiss leaning over for a private conversation, somewhere between classic records filling the room and industry veterans reliving old memories, 50 Cent stepped directly into the frame, not through a television screen, not through a live stream replay, not through a blurry phone recording being passed from person to person. This happened face to face, inside the venue, standing in the doorway, captured forever in a single photograph. And trust me, that photograph is carrying more weight tonight than months of interviews, explanations, and damage control combined. Let me explain what you're really seeing, because there are 4 separate messages hidden inside this image, and every one of them is speaking directly to the audience. First, let's talk about body language. Pay attention to where his arm is positioned. It isn't hanging awkwardly at his side. It isn't folded across his chest like someone trying to keep distance from the person next to them. Instead, it's comfortably resting around Remy Ma's shoulder, natural and familiar, the kind of pose people strike when there is no discomfort, no unresolved tension, and no need to perform for the room. That's not the energy of 2 people navigating old drama. That's the energy of 2 people who realized they were never supposed to be on opposite sides in the first place. Now let's move to the second layer, and that's Remy's smile. I need you to really look at it. Pause if you have to, because that's not the standard smile celebrities give photographers at public events. That's not the forced expression of someone simply checking a box for the cameras. That's the look of a woman enjoying a moment that feels bigger than a birthday celebration, standing confidently inside a building many people believed she would never step foot in after everything that has happened over the past year. That expression isn't just excitement. That expression is confirmation. That expression is validation. That expression looks like proof that speaks louder than words ever could. Then comes layer 3, the people standing behind them. Take a closer look at the background. Turn your brightness up if you need to, because what you'll notice is that some of the most recognizable figures in New York hip-hop are right there witnessing the moment as it unfolds. Not simply attendees, witnesses, co-signers, influential voices watching history happen in real time. This wasn't some secret dinner picture that accidentally found its way online. This wasn't a random candid shot snapped by someone passing through. This felt like a public statement delivered inside a room many people considered to belong to someone else's empire. And finally, we get to the fourth layer, the one that changes the entire conversation, the caption, or more accurately, the lack of one. Remy didn't explain the photo. 50 Cent didn't explain the photo. Nobody attached a lengthy statement underneath it, and somehow that silence became the loudest part of the entire post. Both of them understood exactly what the image represented, and both understood that the second they started explaining it, the impact would become smaller. Sometimes the most powerful message is the one that never has to be written. Knowing when not to say too much is a power move. And if we're being real, that power move echoed louder than any caption possibly could tonight. Now let's shift our attention to the one person missing from the picture, because the empty space inside this frame is telling a story all by itself. Papoose was the person many expected to occupy that spot. For nearly 2 decades, that image was supposed to include him. That expectation wasn't accidental. It was the story he presented to the public year after year. The loyal husband, the quiet strategist behind the scenes, the man standing beside the empress, helping build the kingdom while supporting every move she made. Timeline. And let me be clear about something before we continue. None of this is coming from a place of celebration. I want that to be understood. There is nothing entertaining about watching a relationship fall apart under the spotlight of public attention. At the same time, it's hard to ignore the role personal decisions can play in shaping outcomes. Time after time, he stepped in front of cameras and microphones, attempting to define the situation on his own terms. But people aren't possessions, relationships aren't storage units, and eventually, every person decides for themselves where they belong. Now here's where things become especially interesting for the people paying attention to the bigger picture behind the headlines. When 50 Cent appears publicly beside someone, it often carries more meaning than a casual photo opportunity. It's not always just a greeting. It's not always just a friendly appearance. Many times, it signals alignment, it signals support, and in plenty of cases, it hints that conversations have already taken place behind closed doors long before the cameras arrive. One thing 50 has consistently shown is that he rarely attaches his public image to something without purpose. Whether it's a business venture, a promotional move, a partnership, or a larger strategy, there is usually a reason behind the moment. So maybe the real question isn't whether this was simply a birthday photo. Maybe the question everyone should be asking is what bigger play could be sitting beneath the surface. Is there a new business partnership involved? Is there a future project in development? Is there a documentary, series, or opportunity being quietly assembled away from public view while everyone focuses only on the picture itself? Could this be the beginning of a movie project that suddenly became a much bigger conversation overnight? Could it be connected to a soundtrack placement, a television production, or something else entirely that hasn't been announced yet? Because ever since that birthday event started generating buzz online, speculation has been moving at full speed. And after the image that surfaced tonight, every one of those theories just picked up even more momentum. For people just catching up, discussions surrounding Remy's next move have been circulating for quite some time. There have been whispers about a podcast opportunity. There have been stronger rumors involving a future music collaboration. There have even been conversations about her involvement behind the scenes on a project that remains largely under wraps. But after what happened tonight, those conversations suddenly feel a lot more serious than they did yesterday. That's the effect a public 50-cent cosign can have. It doesn't simply create attention, it changes the entire temperature of the room. Let me put this as clearly as possible, because this point matters. A lot of people have been waiting years to see these two names associated in a meaningful way. The idea of Remy and 50 operating in the same lane always felt like one of those partnerships that could instantly grab the attention of New York hip-hop. A respected lyricist from the Bronx, standing alongside one of Queens' biggest business minds, has always sounded like a combination with massive potential. Yet for years, that possibility never fully materialized. Tonight, however, something felt different. Tonight, Remy appeared to be standing completely in her own spotlight. Tonight, the attention surrounding her felt earned through her own work, her own reputation, and her own accomplishments, and the environment around her only amplified that energy. That wasn't just another celebrity appearance, that felt like momentum changing direction in real time. Now, I want to be careful here because none of us are sitting inside executive meetings, none of us are listening to private phone calls, and none of us have direct access to every conversation happening behind closed doors. So everything from this point forward falls firmly into the category of speculation and observation. But here's what I will say, the way that image appeared feels intentional. The way it spreads feels intentional. And the fact that it was allowed to circulate so quickly feels intentional too. In today's media environment, photographs with this level of impact rarely move without somebody approving the timing. They get reviewed, they get selected, and they get released for a reason. Now let's talk about the details that most people seem to be overlooking. While everyone is focused on the picture itself, very few people are paying attention to the timeline surrounding it. And sometimes the timeline tells the bigger story. In the days leading up to the celebration, certain public patterns appeared to shift. Activity from one side seemed quieter than usual. Activity from another side appeared more polished and carefully managed. At the same time, there were subtle references to future projects floating around online without much explanation attached to them. 3 different storylines appeared to be moving in a similar direction. Maybe that's a coincidence, maybe it isn't, but it certainly has people talking. And that's what brings us to a question many viewers are already asking. Where exactly does Papoose fit into this moment? Not symbolically, literally. Because while one storyline appeared focused on everyday public updates, the next major image people saw featured Remy standing inside one of the most talked about venues connected to 50 Cent, smiling confidently as the internet immediately began drawing conclusions. If someone pitched that contrast as a movie scene, people would probably say it was too obvious. Yet somehow reality keeps producing moments that feel scripted. Now, I'm not going to pretend I know what happens behind the closed doors of anyone's relationship. None of us truly do. But patterns are what people notice. Patterns are what keep conversations alive. Patterns are why viewers have been questioning certain dynamics for years. And those same patterns are a big reason why tonight's photo landed with such force. The only mystery was how it would happen, and when it finally happened, the presentation couldn't have been cleaner. Everything about the image looked professionally executed. The framing was sharp, the lighting was polished, the subjects were positioned perfectly. Nothing about it felt accidental. This didn't look like a random fan snapping a quick shot from across the room. It looked like an image chosen for a purpose. Someone captured it, someone selected it, and someone understood exactly how the internet would react once it appeared. That's the part that keeps the speculation alive, because major public images rarely arrive by themselves anymore. There's usually another angle, another appearance, another update, another piece of the puzzle waiting in the background. Maybe it's a business meeting. Maybe it's a studio session. Maybe it's a future announcement nobody sees coming. Whatever it is, people are already watching closely. So keep your notifications on, because if another image surfaces, this entire conversation could shift once again overnight. Hold up for a second, because there's something I keep seeing in the comments that needs to be addressed. A small but extremely vocal group of people keeps trying to paint tonight's photo as some kind of personal betrayal, as if Remy committed a crime simply by showing up to her own celebration and taking a picture with another industry figure. Let's be realistic for a moment. A grown woman attending her birthday event, networking with peers, and posing for photographs isn't controversy. That's everyday life. If we're going to use the word disrespect, then let's use it consistently. The real issue, according to many critics, was years of decisions that appeared to limit opportunities instead of expanding them. Then simply focus on her work. So when you see people attempting to recast the story and position the Empress as the villain in a moment centered around her own success, remember where much of that perception originally came from. It wasn't created by 50 Cent. It wasn't created by Fat Joe. It wasn't created by any of the other major figures people are discussing tonight. It was shaped over time by the very person whose absence has become one of the biggest talking points surrounding this image. But here's another layer that deserves attention. Look beyond the two people standing in front of the camera. Look at who else was inside that room. These weren't random partygoers showing up for free cake and music. These were influential figures. These were people connected to business decisions, creative opportunities, future partnerships, and major projects. The fact that so many recognizable names were gathered under the same roof at the same time suggests there may have been more happening than a simple birthday party. Because when schedules are busy, align that perfectly, there is usually a reason. You don't often see that many high-level industry calendars sync up purely for a social event. More often, those moments happen when conversations are taking place behind the scenes. Which naturally raises a bigger question. What discussions were happening away from the cameras? What opportunities were being explored? What plans were being presented while everyone else focused on the public celebration? Because the photograph itself may only be the cover page. The real story could be whatever happened behind the scenes after the flashes stopped and the doors closed. And if there is a larger project attached to all of this, pieces of that story will likely emerge over time. Watch the entertainment outlets, watch the trade publications, watch the subtle announcements that tend to appear without much warning, because major moves usually leave clues before they become headlines. Now, let me return to the husband discussion one final time, because I don't want anyone misunderstanding the point being made. This isn't about attacking someone during a difficult public moment. It's about examining a pattern. There was absolutely a version of this story that could have unfolded differently. There was a version where the husband stood proudly beside her during the celebration. There was a version where they shared the spotlight together. There was a version where the headlines the next morning focused on unity instead of separation. But life is shaped by repeated decisions, and eventually, when one space remains empty long enough, someone or something else fills it. So when the clips from this event continue circulating over the coming days, and trust me, they will, keep one question in mind. Where does he fit into the story now? Not physically, narratively. Because the narrative appears to be moving in a new direction, and once public narratives gain momentum, they rarely return to where they started. Here's another question almost nobody is asking yet. If this moment is the beginning of a larger rollout, what does the next visual look like? Because if tonight's image serves as an introduction, then whatever comes next becomes chapter 1. And if there really is a project in development, chances are promotional materials already exist somewhere behind the scenes. That means there could already be cover art, branding concepts, marketing plans, or creative assets waiting for the right moment to surface. And when those visuals eventually appear, they'll reveal a lot about who is driving the strategy. Is this primarily Remy's vision? Is it connected to a 50s camp? Or is there a new collaborative team quietly building something bigger than anyone realizes? Because visual branding leaves fingerprints, and those fingerprints often expose the architects long before official announcements arrive. And before anyone accuses me of celebrating another person's hardship, let me address that directly. That's not what's happening here. I'm not cheering for the collapse of a relationship. I'm analyzing a shift in influence, visibility, and opportunity. Those are completely different conversations. One belongs to the private lives of individuals. The other belongs to the public world they actively participate in. When public figures build brands around public narratives, people naturally discuss those narratives. That's not gossip. That's part of the ecosystem that surrounds celebrity culture. Before wrapping up, I think it's important to remember something that's been overlooked for years. Remy's actual body of work often gets lost beneath conversations about her personal life. Her lyrical ability, storytelling skills, and contributions to hip-hop deserve far more attention than they've received. Yet over and over again, discussions seem to drift away from the music and back toward the relationship drama. Whether intentional or not, that shift changed how many people viewed her career. Tonight, however, the spotlight feels like it's returning to the art itself, the talent, the catalog, the creative vision. And if the momentum created by this moment continues growing, the next year could become one of the most significant periods of her professional career. New projects, new visuals, new business opportunities, new partnerships, the kind of developments that appear suddenly to the public, but were likely being planned months in advance. That's the power of a major cosign. It doesn't just unlock one opportunity, it can change the entire landscape around a person. Before we end this breakdown, here are 3 questions worth keeping an eye on over the next several news cycles. First, what is the husband's next public move? Will he respond? Will he stay silent? And if he does speak, where will he choose to do it? Because past behavior often provides clues about future behavior. Second, what does the next image look like? Who releases it? Where is it taken? And what message does it send? Because follow-up images often tell a bigger story than the first one. And third, what developments happen behind the scenes between the birthday announcement and the release of this photograph? Because major alignments rarely appear out of nowhere. If something larger is taking shape, the clues are already there. The only question is when the rest of the public catches up. At some point, a decision was made. Somebody gave the green light. Somebody removed an obstacle. And if any official details about what's really happening begin appearing through industry reports or public announcements, you already know we'll be right here breaking every piece of it down. Now I want your real opinion in the comments, not the polite answer, not the safe answer, the honest answer. Out of the 3 major questions we discussed today, which one do you think gets answered first? Do you believe the husband steps away from the spotlight, responds publicly, or completely changes his approach moving forward? What do you think is actually sitting beneath that photograph that has everyone talking? Is it business? Is it music? Is it the media? Or is it something nobody has guessed yet? And here's the final question I want you thinking about before you leave this video. If you had to put your last dollar on it, how long do you think it takes before an official announcement changes this entire conversation? Are we talking for a few weeks, a month, somewhere later in the quarter? Because one thing is becoming harder and harder to ignore. Moments like this rarely happen in isolation. They usually lead somewhere. The only mystery left is where that road ends. So drop your prediction below, make sure you're subscribed, and keep those notifications turned on, because if another piece of this puzzle drops, we'll be here breaking it down the second it happens.